All right, everyone, welcome back for another episode of Carnivore Trades. Today's Monday, February 7, 2022. So markets by and large flat all day long. We are seeing a little bit of selling here in the final hour or so. Markets close in about 4 or 5 minutes here. We're seeing them put a little bit of fear on the tape. We did start to push above that 450 handle here, and then they reversed it right lower. There was a lot of calls. If you look at the SPY chain here, there was a ton of calls here at that 450 strike, and all of those are getting absolutely burned out right now. Looking at the put chain, they shouldn't let us get below 445 or so, I would estimate, right about there. That's kind of where the volume drops off. So that's kind of where your floor is, at least for today. But they are putting some fear on the tape here. Again, it looks kind of options market related. I wouldn't make too much out of this, especially if you pull back on the daily time frame. You're just looking at a little pullback pattern here, but on a this range is actually really tight here, and so this dump looks like it's bigger than it is. But if you pull it back to the daily time frame, it's not that big. Plus, we also have the VIX basically flat today, so it's not like we're seeing a massive spike in volatility. But nonetheless, a little bit of a move here off the highs as they, started to break out above that 200 moving average there and get above that 450 handle, and then they pushed it back down. But again, looks like they're gonna have a floor around 445 at least for today. But ultimately, on the daily time frame, you're seeing this kind of same pullback pattern here. You can actually see it a little bit better on the futures. So move up and then little 1, 2, 3 pullback, possibly 4 today there on the E-mini. It's possible we could go down and test that 44 handle there. Right, this is kind of where you broke out of, even number there. You can see it on the spiders as well. 440 right in there. Maybe Tuesday or Wednesday. We also have inflation data on Thursday, so that's something the market's probably going to look ahead to as well. Ultimately, though, we're seeing this kind of pullback pattern across the board. If you look at the Dow Jones Diamond here, up move, 1, 2, 3 little pullback. Even the Russell 2000 actually starting to build a little bit of a base potentially. So nice pop there, and then a little pullback. And the Russell is still green today, so that is a positive right now for the market, at least in the short term. But ultimately, she's outside of the last, 30 minutes. This is a real bore of a day, a total kind of, a sleeper for sure. But anyways, let's go look at a few sectors here, cut through. So SMH here, semiconductors. Again, pop into this area. We said that was going to be resistance, and that is where it's pulling back off. It is holding the 200 moving average for now. But again, kind of just that little pullback, and we talked about that B leg, the ABC up, and it looks like we're still kind of in that B leg right now. IGV Cloud Software also, pop, then down, and then back up. So another choppy kind of consolidation-ish pattern here on Cloud Software. Dow Transport, same exact thing. Move up, a little bit of a pullback here, so kind of retesting that low, but still didn't take out Friday's lows, so it is holding up okay. Let's take a look at the home builders. Again, pop off the lows, retested it, closed green, and then another rollover. Again, we talked about how the home builders were a little bit weaker here, but possibly printing a nice little doji here, so that may put in a higher low here moving forward. And the VNQ as well, a little bit stronger of a pattern, but again, you see the same kind of pullback pattern here across the board. Rates paused a little bit today after that massive move on Friday. Typically not strange at all to see the market kind of pause after a big up move, or really any asset do that. So not surprising to see the 10-year just kind of stalling out, putting in a little bit of a doji candle here today. You see the weekly there that is still holding up really well, and the 30-year as well. Kind of getting to that 200 moving average, although you did consolidate below it a little bit. So that 200 is a little bit less major than it normally would be otherwise. But again, a little bit of a pullback there on the 30-year as treasuries kind of paused. XLF here remaining strong, still looking green on the day, up 0.25% here. And again, we talked about how it regained its trend here above all 4 major moving averages. Near term, you probably get to this gap window, maybe gap fill. That's kind of your upside there. Broker dealers, just pulled back a little bit today, but again, pop and then a pause here. Market's about to close. Let's take a look at the spider. So look at that tail candle. So they defended that 446 handle and closed it just above 447 there. So, markets held the lows of the day, at least on a closing basis here, but we'll go check back in on the spiders here in a minute. I want to talk about JP Morgan. So that actually did not participate in this little afternoon sell-off, by the way. It seemed to be mostly tech stocks that were selling off there. But JP, we talked about this trend line here and that 20 moving average. It may want to pause here and pull back a little bit before getting through that. But, ultimately, nice little pop there for JP. Again, if it gets above that trend line, if it can confirm above that, that would be a positive. Then you could probably go up, fill this gap, maybe the 50, 200, 50 moving average and 200 moving average. And Goldman, kind of same kind of thing here. We talked about this gap fill. That coincides with the 50 and 200 moving average. So, just kind of a looking peek there at financials. And we always follow Goldman and JP as they are leading financial indicators. Anyway, moving on to XLE, kind of a weird little inside day. So you had a bigger body than the previous candle, but you had a wider range as well, but you stayed inside of that range on a closing basis. So a weird kind of like inside out day there on XLE, but nonetheless, not closing at a new high here. XOP a little bit weaker. It did kind of gap down and came off the lows a little bit, but ultimately just kind of a doji candle. And the OIH, again, made a new high here, about 6 or 7 month new high here, going back to June, but ultimately closing kind of within last week's range. So nothing really crazy going on there. Crude, on the other hand, this one did pull back a little bit. So you see this broadening trend line here. We had a little bit of a pause here. So you had a 1-2 pop Thursday, Friday, and then kind of a pause here. So we'll see if it pulls back a little bit, but ultimately I don't really have any sort of sell signal on crude other than possibly this trend line. But at this point, crude is just so strong. It's really hard to bet against it or really do anything with it at this current time. Nat gas continuing to come off the high. So this has just been a wild chart here. It just gets wilder every day. Gap down and then crashed all the way down to the 50 moving average and the 200, bounced off of that. So it's holding those for now. You did kind of get back to this. You had a little bit of support here. Here's your kind of previous pivot high. Almost got down to that 40, well, I call it like 407, 408 handle. That was kind of where you're the top of where your kind of potential bear flag was starting to form. So that, that area ended up being support. But yeah, just all over the map, just a ridiculous chart right now. And I would not touch it for the life of me at this point, because it's just completely all over the place and there is absolutely no trend. So let's take a look at the dollar. Dollar pretty much a nothing burger, popped off to the 100 moving average on Friday and just kind of hanging in there. Not a whole lot to report on that. Gold here. So gold actually got a nice little bid today. And so this is the area we got to watch now is 1823.80. So we can close above that. Then gold can go back up and test possibly 1850. So that is kind of your level to watch there on gold, but a nice little pop there. Again, we talked about it was starting to form an inside bar kind of pattern, but it did get, it is getting a bid. So if it can close above that high, then it can clear up to 1850, and that would be your next test. Silver, same kind of deal, had that little inside bar bearish pattern here. Did get above this high here. It needs to close above, it needs to close above 2362 though. And then from there, you can get up to 2450, maybe 2460. So nice little turnaround there for the PMs. Platinum, I talked about this consolidation pattern. This is still good. I still like it. It still needs to do a little bit more backing and filling, but nothing wrong with that pattern there. Palladium, nice little test candle here. I like these test candles when you get them. Got all the way down basically to that 20 MA, and you just back tested these two pivots here. Got to bounce off of that. So, again, I still think Palladium probably needs to do a little bit more backing and filling to get through this chop here, but ultimately pattern holding up okay. And copper basically flattish, a total nothing burger, but you do have three kind of hammer candles in a row. So, it is starting to whack on that resistance a little bit. But ultimately copper is just, look at the tight range it's been in for like 2 months now, actually more than that, really going back to October. So seeing is believing for me with copper. I'll believe that it's broken out when it actually breaks out and confirms. But nice little move there for the metals today. Let's flip over to trading view. Let's talk about Bitcoin. So I talked about Bitcoin. So it had this bearish pattern here, but I said, I still think it has a chance to get above that, and it did. So now our targets here, we talked about, if it gets through 41 spot 116, you're going to go up to 44. That's where we're at right now. So we're at 44,000. We could possibly get up to 46 and change, maybe 47, because this trend line is up sloping. So wherever it meets, but wherever it meets this trend line, it's going to be up sloping a little bit each day. But yeah, ultimately this is kind of your target here. This also coincides with this previous this previous breakdown area here around 46 to 47,000. So that's probably going to be your near-term target there for Bitcoin. Ether, same kind of deal. Again, we talked about that 30, I think it's 3034 area. We closed above that. And now we're kind of cleared off here, so we get a chance up, we get a good bid up to 3,400 in the meantime before you have any sort of resistance. But nice little move there on crypto. And an interesting thing to point out, I just kind of noticed. We had this kind of, so bear flagish kind of pattern here on Ether and Bitcoin and pretty much all the cryptos, right? If we flip back over and look at gold, we had the same kind of deal here, right? So move down and then kind of a bearish pattern that is starting to fail. And, same thing on silver. You got to move down, bearish pattern. Now that's starting to pop in the other direction. So interesting, you're seeing Bitcoin and gold kind of positively correlated right now. So, doesn't necessarily mean that's going to continue forever, but something to definitely keep an eye on. And it's strange to see that happening with yields kind of just pausing and the dollar really just pausing today. It's not like the dollar was moving very much. It's not like yields were moving a whole lot either. So interesting to see gold and Bitcoin get a bid there when you're not really seeing the other assets that typically correlate do anything with it either. Anyway, let's flip back over the spiders. So down 1/3%. Again, nothing major here. This was a pretty dramatic drop here for really a much ado about nothing. But, we'll continue to watch it. Again, it may want to come back down here. So this is where you broke out of. You had this little bearish pattern. Couldn't get above 440. It's possible you go down there and test 440 again. I would not rule that out at all. But ultimately, I still think I'm still in the camp that we do have, maybe we do dip down here. But ultimately, I do think we have another leg up. How high that goes will depend on where we pivot, where support is. But I do have a few ideas. Anyways, guys, I'm going to wrap it up here. Thanks for watching. Come join me at Carnivore Trades. We just took another winner, by the way, on Friday after hours. It was Peloton. We picked this up, took 24% on it on the Amazon rumors, and they did not get refuted over the weekend. So this stock held its gains, and they do report earnings on Tuesday. So this will be interesting to see. Then there was I believe I heard something about Nike possibly being interested in them as well. So, I mean, if this stock gets into a bidding war, it could get pretty crazy here. But we're not in this anymore, but we took our 24% and walked away. But yeah, if you guys want to get in on that, carnivoretrades.com, come join me. It's only going to be $5 a month for another week or so, and that is going up to 15. So get in while you can at that cheap price. And anyways, yeah, hope to see you guys there. You guys have a great rest of your night. Take care, and I'll talk to you all tomorrow.